it says, you discussed renunciation of possessions and tangible objects during today's Dhamma talk. Does renunciation also include the intangible? For example, mental formations, perceptions, unskillful thoughts, etc. Did anybody hear me mention that? So I think I did mention that. Maybe you were had dozed off for a few seconds, or was is in some other way missed that. But yeah, I said that even our extra unnecessary mental baggage that we carry around with us, we want to renounce that. And that includes negative thoughts and any other types of things that you're still clinging to, that don't bring you any real sort of benefit. Of course, you can only renounce that when you've developed a high degree of mindfulness and so on, that you can actually let go of them. Yesterday, you said we shouldn't turn outside for satisfaction because the world doesn't care and most people don't care. They care about themselves. How do we find love and happiness in a world like this? Now, I may have mentioned something like that most people don't care about you, and because but of course there are exceptions. Your close family members and other people may care about you, but I'm talking about the world in general, and to invest heavily in your depending on the external world for your happiness. That's what I was meant to say or implied, was we shouldn't depend too heavily on the outside world for our satisfaction because it's independable. Because the objects are changing, and then the people, as we just mentioned, they're also changing. And the only thing you can rely on basically is your own mind, and that only after you've developed it to a high degree and have reestablished some connection with the awareness, with the ever-present awareness that's always there just beneath the surface of our active mind. That's the only real dependable thing. But once we've cultivated it, we've kind of made some good progress in making it a more or less near permanent type of thing, where any moment we can stop and boom, we can come to that kind of level of just the knowing mind, awareness, and rest there for some minutes or longer, to be able to do that almost at will. That is the skill of meditation. Of course, that's a very high level of attainment, but nevertheless it is doable and reachable even for lay people if you decide that that's something worth their effort. How does one distinguish between the ego and the mind? What are some meditations for pride? Pride, conceit and vanity, all those words are kind of similar. Anyway, the ego is part of the mind. I mean, when we say the mind, it's a very complex phenomenon, because there's a lot of aspects of the mind. And of course, the main part of the mind is consciousness. But in order to experience the world and be alive and do things, we have to have also feeling, perception, volition, memory, and so on. But those are the contents of the consciousness. Consciousness basically is just like, a light. But if there's nothing to illuminate, then, you don't really see anything. So it's what we're aware of is the feelings when we feel things, and then the mind's reaction of having aversion, a painful feeling, pleasant feeling, and then the perceptions and the memory is basically the memory, remembering each thing and knowing what it is, and then the past and future related about it too, that type of memory and the reaction. So all of that together we call the mental process. So, and the ego is simply the sense of I that's in there, and the sense that we're the doer, the thinker and the doer. And there's the ego and thinking. I mean, the ego creates a thinking, and there's a French philosopher named Descartes, and his famous saying was, I don't know the Latin terms, but I knew it, but anyway, basically I think, therefore I am. So that's taken to be because we think, therefore he thinks there must be some permanent individual or ego or whatever. I think, therefore I am. But a Buddhist would interpret it, I think, therefore I think I am. You see the difference? We think, therefore we think I am somebody. But it's because we don't see through the illusion. The ego does exist, but on a relative level. The I exists, it does exist in the mind for everybody except an arahant. The I does exist, but it's not a permanent entity. That's what you have to understand. On a relative level, yes, of course, it exists, and we need it to a large extent to, function in the world. But it's not, doesn't have any absolute permanent independent existence. That's the main thing that needs to be understood about. So when you say the ego doesn't exist, it does exist on a relative level, but we have to understand how we're using the words. In the ultimate sense, it's an illusion, because that can be directly experienced in meditation when it dissolves. Anyway, what are some meditations for pride? there's a story in the suttas. There was one a female, like she was like a queen or a courtesan. Anyway, she was very beautiful, and she was very proud about that. And she used to get a lot of money for one-night stands and all that. But she was a disciple of the Buddha. There was a lot of them like that. They were followers of the Buddha. The Buddha didn't say, "Oh, you're bad" or anything like that. No. But anyway, or I don't know if I got the story exactly right. It could have been a queen or somebody. But anyway, some woman that was proud about her looks, her body or whatever. So she came to the Buddha. And then the Buddha, with a feat of psychic power, he caused her to have like a flash of images from what she looked like now, flashing it ahead 50 years, a new image every 2 or 3 years, until it was just an old withered up, shriveled up, 100-year-old person, and then falling down dead. So that's a psychic power that Buddha could kind of put that into somebody's mind. And she saw that. And it cured her of her pride when she saw that, because so that's just an example of I don't know if you can try that yourself, but but knowing these also, the 5 things of the body. In fact, when you become a monk or a nun, you have to memorize these things. You have to say head hair, body hair, skin, teeth, and nails. These are the outside of our body that everybody sees. When you see the outside of the body, you see hair on the head, you see hair on the body, if you have some, teeth, of course, the skin, and the nails. And all 5 of those things are which people covet, in which they pamper, in which they use to flaunt and entice and to make beautiful, because that's what people see, right? And how many, every 5 of them, how much money is spent on hair? How much money is spent on teeth, getting perfect teeth, making them white, getting the perfect nails, painting them up, all that, even toenails. In the skin, how much is spent in the cosmetic surgery? Probably trillions of dollars if you added, more than maybe anything else in the world. I don't know, but a lot, right? But and if you take all that away, then most people wouldn't be so attractive, or it wouldn't attract others. But you have to paint yourself up and then do all kind of things, have the perfect everything then. So that's vanity and pride, about that. But you take all that away, and where does that go? I mean, some people may be all right looking without any of those things, but still, it's subject to change very quickly. You could get a skin disease, and your skin could all of a sudden, get all kind of, what they call it, plaque psoriasis, or whatever it is, by various things, or, anything could happen. Your hair could fall out. All these things are subject to impermanence. So this is also a meditation, meditating on these things. And this body isn't all that flattering, especially, people who may not have the perfect, which most people don't. So, but we have to cover it up, and we have to put on clothes, and we have to do all this stuff, and then, you look like a little Barbie doll. but or men as well. But so you can contemplate that and stop wearing all those things or doing all those things. Just let your body be go back to its normal. Stop taking a bath every day. Or putting on deodorant. See, it's only this thing that makes the body seem to be something pleasant. Otherwise, without that, the body is not all that pleasant. See, it's an illusion that people have created. And it brings a lot of suffering. Because if you don't have the means to do all that, then people feel like they're inferior or something. And all this glamour that in the world, it's really something else. Okay. If we don't become attached to one person and love many, how do we form long-term committed relationship like marriages? No, a person can, unless a person decides they really want to attain enlightenment in this life, or they want to become a monk or a nun, but you can have a relationship, but don't jump into it too quickly. Look at a lot of the broken relationships are people that got married too quickly before they knew the other person. But even then you can't guarantee what the other person is going to change, because it happens, right? So a person could be very nice for a few years, but whatever kind of karma, we don't know, it could come up and people can change. And if you're willing to accept that, and if you need that kind of feedback, or you want to have a family, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to know that it's got a lot of heavy karma comes with it. And if you're willing to accept it and accept the suffering and the hardships that come with raising children, let's say you have a husband and after the children are born, the husband, and then the person has to raise the kids by themselves, and it's very difficult, especially if they don't have a high-paid kind of skill, and there's all kind of problems around. So you got to think very carefully before getting into relationships. But there's no problem with that. I mean, we have to have marriages and we have to have kids in the world so people can be born. But just know that it's subject to change, and it's a very heavy karma. It's not something once you have a kid, it's a lifetime, right? I mean, those who are parents. I don't know. I'm not a parent, but. It's a lifetime commitment. You just can't leave the children there and go away. Although some people do that, but they cause the child suffering. So it's not just you. So be careful whenever you decide to do that. And but many people have satisfying relationships. Yes, also. So. But when you have a relationship with one person, it comes with many, many strings, and the other person has many, many expectations, and it limits your ability to meet other people, because the other people get jealous. They don't want you to go around and meet other people and do things, because they get jealous. They're afraid you're gonna maybe. So there's a lot of. That's why I knew personally. When I was 12 years old, I'd never get married. I had that intuitive insight. Mainly because my sister got married young and she had a lot of problems in her marriage, and I thought, why do I want to get myself involved in all that kind of problem? But then later, when I went to Sri Lanka, and I knew I was going to become a monk, in Sri Lanka, and I was 26 years old, And I was walking along the street, Bauda Loco, Mawat, Colombo, and they have a lot of palm readers out standing on the street with little placards, saying, "Come, let me read your hand reading, palm reading." So, I used to never do that. Go get it done. But this time I thought, and I was going to be a monk. My ordination was a week away. And so I thought, okay. So the guy gets my hand. Then he goes, "Oh, if you're not married before you're 27, you'll never get married." And the next week I became a monk, and 2 weeks later I turned 27. So, and then I believed in that kind of thing. Would you describe how to tell the difference between thinking as the sixth sense and thinking as part of the fourth aggregate? Well, I don't know if there is a whole lot of difference, because the mind is the sixth sense, not just thinking, but the mind and the mind and consciousness that can, sense things. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. The fourth aggregate is more than just thinking. It's the whole mental formations and so on. Is when I have a good mindfulness, I can notice I can notice the things I want to say to others. And so I examine why I want to say them. Much of the time it's just to portray or prop up my image I want to have. That's true. Just to feed the ego. That's very true. It's a little unsettling. Realizing that so much of what I've said, done in the past was such a shallow reason to reinforce the image of me as funny, smart, or whatever. That's true. That's much of our talk is that, including this malicious gossip that I was mentioning today, and even frivolous talk when we get talking with others and so on, boasting, and exaggerating stuff to make people think we're something, and all that. Everything comes back to the ego. You can't get away from it. The ego is behind every single thing you do. That doesn't mean everything is bad necessarily. We can. With this good ego, you have a sense that, okay, I'm a meditator, I want to do good, I want to change my mind, and you lead a good life, and if you do that's okay. We need the sense of self to practice, because it's kind of a catch-22, because we have to use the ego to practice, but in the end we have to give it up to attain the highest level, but we can't give it up right away. And so that's why you have to have a positive self-image, not the negative one. And you have to tame the ego. You have to tame it, not get rid of it. You have to tame it. So it doesn't do things that cause you, regrets and fear and worry and suffering. And so that's what we're doing in meditation. We're, taming it, not letting it get out of hand. But we do need a certain amount of it to basically to get by in the world. But not to believe it's something real. We use it, but we don't believe that it's something absolutely real. We use it just as a necessity. And that's why actually the Buddha had criterion about speech. There's a famous sutta, a discourse of the Buddha, given to his son, Rahula, who was a young novice at the time. And he was talking to him about speech. And he said, whenever you have the idea to speak, first you have to consider, is what I am about to say going to be harmful for myself, harmful for others, or harmful for both myself and others? And if you see that it would be causing some kind of harm, don't say it. And then that's even before you start to speak, and then while you are speaking, if while you are speaking to somebody you realize that, what I'm saying is not very cool, zip it immediately. Don't carry on the conversation. Start to cough and say, excuse me, I think I'm sick. Well, maybe not that. And then, after you have spoken and you realize that you did speak some unskillful language that's going to maybe come back to you or hurt the other person, then, vow not to do it again. And that could be the same criterion that you apply to your actions also. So, because the speech again is, has all those connotations, creates a lot of karma, even more, just as much or even more than our actions. People are not going around physically abusing and killing things all the time, but with their mouth, they're creating a lot more. In fact, there's a saying that every person is born with an axe in their mouth. And that means that they cut off their foot or hurt themselves by, the talk, unmindful talk. And that's why the Buddha had a kind of a unwritten rule or a guideline for monks. Whenever two or more of you are together, speak only about the Dhamma or keep silence. And it was not to get involved. And he rebuked them for getting, having little chit-chat and so on. He didn't approve of that, not for monks anyway. But, of course, in this day and age, it's hard to do it. But again, the middle path is the criteria. The Noble Eightfold Path is called the middle path. So not indulging in the extremes. We have to live in the world, we have to communicate with people, we have to, have interactions. And so we have to use the Dhamma, use that Dhamma to maintain the middle path and not getting out onto the one extreme of denying yourself any type of creature comfort or any type of little just pleasure, and on the other hand, overindulging, and so on, or not having any friends or any relationships as opposed to having, too many, and so on. How many objects do you need to have clear perception of per second to be in Kanika Samadhi? 30. No. There's no set number. It's but when because when your mind is still not that clear and your mind is slow, then your Kanika Samadhi will be slow. But when the mind gets clearer, more like that mirror, then it could be many. There's no way to count them really, but you can have a good idea. I mean, when you meditate, but I would say at least in terms of speeding up the rate of perception, you should be able to easily notice 5 or 10 in 1 second. But it could be many more than that too. But it's not that they're one after the other, they're simultaneously. You can hear, they may be one after another, but that is a way, way deep speed, trying to observe the speed of a supercomputer. So it's doubtful you'll be able to reach that speed of observing arising and vanishing, but very easily to notice a few or 5 or 10 or even more is not that really that too much difficult. Because even when hearing, sometimes you can hear 5 or 6 different sounds just at the same time, as well as feeling body sensations. You may not see them exactly arising and vanishing, but to be able to just notice them come and go, or happening at the same time. Even that is a very clear state of awareness, even though you actually may not see them arising and vanishing, but be able to be aware of many things going on at the same time is an equally deep level of awareness. Like in the room, there's the sound of the fans going on all the time. There's the sound of the motor of this machine over here. There's maybe birds chirping outside and other things. And you can hear them basically all at the more or less at the same time, as well as feeling sensations, different sensations. So just check it out in your next meditation. And the more things you can notice, that means the mind is clear, because it's like the mirror. The more dust that is cleaned out of the mirror, the more you see the reflection. Any good story of yogis or meditators rupturing a blood vessel or tearing a ligament from sitting meditation? suggestions on how to prevent this. Middle path. And practice yoga. Those exercises I've been showing you about, stretching out the knee joints and the hips and the ligaments, but in a measured way, and gradually building up the ability for the stress in those to take it. But yeah, there's something interesting. When I first started teaching retreats, this was like back in 1980. 1980, 81 in Sri Lanka. A lot of Westerners used to come up to this place called Nilambi Meditation Center in Galaha. And, most of them were like, hippie types, fresh off the trail, half drugged and everything else, But like I was in the beginning. Anyway. So they came up there to meditate, and I was teaching courses, not the only, there were some other people teaching courses. But then I left for a long time, and then I came back. And then over some period of time, there came to be a new medical term called Nilambi knees. I said, what the heck? Nilambi knees? Somebody mentioned that. He asked me, do you have Nilambi knees? What's that? Then he said, it was because these meditators that go up there and they're going to, see somebody in a lotus and force themselves to, want to sit in the lotus position when they weren't really ready for that, or maybe not that extreme, but anyway, sitting a long time, and then they got damage to their knees, and they went down to a doctor in Kandy. Some doctor in Kandy is where Godwin Samaratna, the head of the monastery, used to send people down if they had problems, go down and see that doctor. So they went down there. And this doctor had, was hearing all these problems that people were having with their knees, what do they call it, meniscus, torn meniscus, and whatever, the different things. And so he coined that term, Nilambi knees, the doctor. And so when somebody came down and said, oh, you got Nilambi knees. And so that became a new medical term. So, yeah, it has happened, not to me personally. I mean, I've been sitting in the full lotus position since 1974. I mean, more than 43 years. I mean, for hours, and probably have more than many thousands of hours of sitting in the foot. But I've never had any pain in my knees or any problem with my knees. No torn meniscuses, no anything else. And I don't know why, but everyone's different. But I'm just saying. But the fear that people have about that is, that fear about damaging their knees, and no doubt many people may do that. Whether they did it because they were forcing themselves too much or something, I don't know. Or maybe it's just in the genes or whatever. But everybody has to, you have to use your common sense about it. And but I was a gung-ho monk. When I was young, 25 years old, I was gung-ho, hell-bent on enlightenment, And I was, living in the forest and living in snake-infested caves and practicing death meditation and doing all these kind of things. So I was a little bit crazy. But it seemed to be turned out all right. I don't know. But, so, when you're first starting to practice, you have all this, you get excited and you think enlightenment should come within a few months or even just a couple of retreats. You should be able to attain stream entry and this and that. So people have a lot of expectation, a lot of energy, but then, after, many retreats, they finally realize, well, maybe a little longer than I thought. what is the most effective way to confess my wrongdoings to the Buddha? Well, you don't confess your wrongdoings to the Buddha, you confess it to your own mind, the inner Buddha. That means the wisdom nature of your own mind. You're acknowledging that I've done something unskillful, and you kind of, when you're saying I ask forgiveness from the Buddha, you're asking forgiveness basically from your deeper mind, from the pure mind, not some external, like a god or whatever. Buddha's not like that. You can pray to or forgive. So it's symbolical when you read these things. May the Buddha forgive me, the Dhamma forgive me. You're addressing your deeper consciousness, so that hopefully you will muster up the strength not to repeat it. That's the main thing. Of course, as monastics, we actually have to confess our wrongdoings to other monks, and then that's like, because then everyone will know what we did. So, therefore, it's an extra kind of incentive not to break the precepts, because then if we confess it to another, they'll say, "You stupid fool! Why did you do that?" Well, they may not say that, but it's kind of that shame, the sense of shame. In fact, that's actually a spiritual quality, considered a very positive and good spiritual quality, is a sense of shame and scruples, about what you're doing. Not being proud about the bad things that you do, but having a sense, because it will help you to not do it. It will help you to muster up the energy not to continue doing it. It's called Hiriyon Otappa, Pali words. Those are considered good qualities. As a devoted lay person, without likely ever becoming a monk, how do you know? How can I best practice the Dhamma? I didn't know I would become a monk when I was, even 21 or 22 years old. Minding my own business. I followed the hippie trail over to India, staying stoned on LSD and hashish, and even got put in prison in Afghanistan. I was lucky to get out with my life. Went to India and just by whatever I bumped into somebody that started talking about meditation, and what meditation? And it like struck something deep inside. That's what I got to do. Of course, I had done this paper on Buddhism that I already mentioned before that, so I knew a little bit about the Dhamma, and because I was staying stoned and I did foolish things that got me put in prison in Afghanistan, my sentence was $500 fine or life in prison. Fortunately, I had $500. But anyway. So then I thought, I got to India. Actually, I was passing my way through Nepal to go trekking in the Himalayas, because all the hippies were going there to Nepal to go trekking in the Himalayas. And so I went through Sarnath, which is the place where the Buddha preached his first sermon in India, so Buddhist holy place. I went through there just because, I had studied Buddhism. I thought I was on the way, so let's go check it out. And I was sitting there, and then I was, just thinking, trying to remember what was the Buddha saying about. And I realized I gotta get off these drugs, because I could have been killed, because of my foolish actions, staying so stoned. I had lost my common sense, and so it was in that state of mind. And when I heard about some other passing Westerner who had just come from a meditation course, and I was up in the Himalayas sitting by a nice Himalayan river. Actually, I was stoned already. And the guy came down like out of the blue, and sat down and started talking about meditation. And all of a sudden, my mind was just riveted about what he was saying, about getting into the body and feeling sensations. Wow. And at the end of that talk, I said, that's what I got to do. Now, I don't know if the drugs had anything to do with it, but I ran almost 2 days out of the mountains, even without shoes. My shoes were broken, to get to the meditation course before it filled up. Because this guy said, yeah, there's going to be a meditation course in a couple of weeks. And that's what had such a grip on me like that. And I went to that meditation course. And halfway through that course, I had just a mind-blowing experience. It just like wiped out half of my past cravings, and I knew I had to become a monk. It didn't happen right away, but it was such a powerful experience. So those things can and do happen to people. I know other people that had similar type of very powerful, life-changing experiences. So anyway, on the last day, I'm going to be giving some other pointers about how to practice the Dhamma in the lay life, apart from what I mentioned today, which is sort of a foundation, but there's some other things to help, kind of. Oh, this is interesting. Biology and evolution have created a genetic urge to seek out pleasure and avoid pain. For example, even one-celled organisms also, move toward nutriments and, stay away from toxins. And I gave that example, I think, in the first day's talk about the ant crawling around, and even it senses danger and wants to get away from that, and seeking happiness. So by working to eliminate attachment to the 5 aggregates, are we rewiring our DNA in addition to our minds? Absolutely. And the DNA is part of karma, and we've created that, and our karma attracts us to parents that are going to provide the DNA to the new life that will help them. And you can even change your DNA now in this life over a period of time to a certain extent, if you develop that deep level of mindfulness and wisdom. This rewiring the brain, changing one's habits, and so on, that can alter the DNA and the way that you change, and even the brain. If you start to experience altered states of consciousness and start to be able to quite frequently enter deep meditation states, that's also going to dramatically affect the body and the mind, that would then attract you to environments where you will have access to that kind of DNA that you need to accord with what your destiny is, or what your karmic path is leading toward. That's why everybody is born basically because of the past karma. And you're born in a certain country, to certain parents with certain types of DNA, whether you're sickly, have a DNA that causes you to have a lot of sickness and other problems, or DNA to be healthy, that's part of karma. The past karma. Because when you die, the mind is like magnetized. So our mind, with its thoughts, its memory, its accumulated greed or hatred or other types of thoughts, or even wisdom, it's kind of, creates a magnetized field. And when you die, the last sort of thoughts in your mind are said to determine where that mind will be attracted to. And that's why the importance is purifying one's thoughts. So at the last moment, at the time of death, you're not, thinking about, your grandkids, or you're not thinking about, somebody grudge, or, not having forgiven people, or other negative thoughts. Because if the mind leaves the body with these kind of thoughts, it's going to be attracted to a place where you're going to have those kind of thoughts in the future, or be subjected to those kind of thoughts. But if you're free from that, and you have thoughts of very, very positive types of thoughts, and thoughts of wisdom, and letting go, having let go of greed and hatred to a large extent, and developed consciousness, then like a magnetic field pull, the mind will be attracted to a place that will allow you to then carry on and work out the karma that you had created, or to experience the results of the karma that you had been cultivating. That's why it's very important. And that's why the whole practice of Dhamma, you could say, is a preparation for death. But because we don't know when we'll die, or how we'll die, or where we'll die, we can't bank on putting things off until later. Because there's an interesting saying by some ancient person: tomorrow or the next life, we don't know which is going to come first. There's so many people who thought they were going to live for, many more years, and they were dead the next morning by so many different means, getting stabbed, murdered at night, or dying of a heart attack, or dying in some natural catastrophe. It happens to thousands of people every single day across the earth. That's why we shouldn't say, I'm going to put off practicing until I retire, or put off until later, because there may not be a later, or much later. Okay. Better finish this up. Okay. Would you please elaborate further on balancing Vipassana and Samatha practice, and how the two complement one or another? Maybe tomorrow. It's too complicated, right? It would take too long right now. Okay. Can you be both a mindful and a forgetful person? Yes, forgetting is sometimes an organic brain thing. When you get older, the brain cells don't work so good anymore, and people forget things. It doesn't necessarily mean you're not mindful, or you're not mindful in other aspects. Paying attention to what you're doing, rather than remembering, paying attention to what you're doing in the. But then, if the mind spaces out and you're unmindful, these things may, happen even to. We don't know. There hasn't been any research done about enlightened people and who have become ill, at least not any that I know of, and how that affects their cognition. It would depend on what state of enlightenment they had attained. If it was full enlightenment, it may well not really affect them. But if it was just some lesser stage of enlightenment, then it might have affected them like that. Like there's a case of Ajahn Chah, who's a very well-known meditation master in Thailand, and he had many Western disciples, still has. And he was sick for almost 9 years in a semi-vegetative state. And you couldn't really tell from the outside if he was conscious or not most of the time, or what, you couldn't tell. If he was mindful or not, there's no way of knowing. But there's others who, the Buddha, that's another story, but he said even when he was near his death, of course he died fairly young, 80 years old, but he said that he could give a Dhamma talk day and night for many days and never repeat the same words twice, or the same phrases twice. That his knowledge and memory was so vast. But that's a Buddha. A Buddha has many more qualities than even just an average enlightened person. Okay, I think that's enough for this evening. My mother just reached 100 years old last week, and her memory is fantastic, but now she forgets a couple of little things. I said, give her a break. She thinks it's bad that she forgot somebody's name. Even we forget people's names. She's 100 years old and she's complaining that she forgot somebody's name. Okay, again, just take one nice, long, slow, deep, 3-part breath. Touch base with the present moment. stand up to relieve your legs a bit. Let's begin some three-part breathing. And see if you can kind of lengthen the length of time of, one in-breath. If you can kind of count to 8 just for one long in-breath and hold the air in for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holding 1, 2, 3, 4. Out breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But again, if you stray at that, then just work on 6 counts. gas cylinder very slowly, you hear that. So when you first breathe in, you don't breathe in a lot. You just let it come in very slowly. That way the kilometers fill up. Regularly takes a lot of training. Next in breath up on the toes, on the hip. So with the out breath, you don't let the out, the air out quickly. Out. Same with the head turning. Actually, with the head turning, try to breathe mostly in your upper lobe.